Good evening.
Good evening. God bless you, everyone. Thank you for taking a few minutes to tune in with us. This is Begin Again. I'm Dr. Ray Johnson here with my lovely bride tonight. Wanted to make sure that you take a few minutes to tune in with us. What you're hearing in the background, Israel Houghton, Sunday Kind of Love. That was our exit song coming down right out of the experience of our wedding coming together on that day. So glad that we had the chance to do this. My name is Dr. Ray Johnson. I happen to be an educator.
Grave mistakes we make is that we think that the enemy has the ability to create. He doesn't. He has the ability to create. Has the ability to create. He does.
Real quickly, see if you, there we go. All right, now we gotta finish up on it on tonight. So listen, we've been having, honey, this conversation that we've been talking about how relationships work well together, how well they come well together. And not that we've learned everything, but what we've tried to do is talk a little bit about what we've learned along the way.
Right.
And so we're glad everyone's taking a chance to tune in with us tonight. Tell them a little bit about who you are.
Well, I am Alitash Kebebe Johnson, married to this beautiful, handsome, debonair man of God. I am
All right.
A worshiper, a writer, and a woman of God who, yes, is in love with God's gift to me. And I'm just very grateful tonight that we have folk tuning in. Do want to say good evening to my lovely sister, Teresa Harris. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And for all those who are coming in, we're just so grateful and thankful that you're with us and that you share in our experience. Because we're moving quickly into that second year of marriage now. And so it's just been it's been a learning experience. We've had challenges along the way. We've had victories, and believe it or not, we've had some challenging situations along the way too. But thank God that we're moving into deuces, that double.
In the year of 2022, the year of deuces. Thank you all for so much for tuning in. Thank you for sharing it. Listen, like we've been saying, we've been kind of talking about and chronicling our experience of what we're learning along the way. We've developed something called the acid test. I know we're mentioning it each and every time we come on because we are going to come back to it and really kind of get into determining what are the toxicity levels in a relationship or whether or not you should engage with an individual, with a person or not. And so that being the case, we'll make sure that we spend some time so that you can have a chance to look at that. Look forward to that coming very, very soon. But
right. And there's a mantra that I want to put with it. And it's,
go ahead.
Choose your burn when it comes to the acid test, because every time we think of acid, we think of something burning.
Yeah.
But there's also an acid that cleanses and an acid that kind of clears things out. We know we want some measure of acid in some things, but then we want an antacid,
Yeah.
But you've got to choose the burn that you want. Do you want the burning of the passion in your relationship, or do you want that burn that hurts and causes injury? So you got to choose your burn. And so the acid test is being designed to kind of take an inventory of what you're walking into, or maybe what you've already walked through and learned from. So I'm excited about that coming to full fruition.
Absolutely. It'll be coming soon. And we'll give all the numbers and those kind of things. I want to dive right in tonight with our tonight's discussion. And tonight we're talking a little bit about understanding how we're different by design and then how to do life together, what causes things to work. All too often we find ourselves as men and women entering into relationships with each other, hopefully entering into matrimony with each other, that sometimes we really don't understand the differences of how women orient to the world into relationships and how men orient to the world into relationships. And so in order for them to work, I think that is absolutely critically important. In order for that to take place, I brought some help tonight. Great friend of mine, Pastor Andy Thompson, down in Raleigh, North Carolina, in his ministry. And he put together something very, very, I thought, thought-provoking in regards to the differences of dynamics of how husbands and wives, or men and women, relate to each other in concerning relationships.
So it wasn't just our T-shirts,
It wasn't just our T-shirt. Our T-shirt tonight says, they can't really see mine.
Yeah, most I don't do matching shirts.
But I do. So
we had to reach a compromise.
Yeah. about how to reach a compromise. I want you to just follow along with us tonight, and let's take a look at what Pastor Thompson has to say.
He only has the ability to corrupt. So one of the grave mistakes we make is that we think that the enemy has the ability to create. He doesn't. He only has the ability to corrupt. So we're looking at a design factor. It's not a design flaw. It's just the way that we're designed. Men are designed to be moved by sight and the physical, and that's why pornography is primarily aimed at men, and romance novels are primarily aimed at women, because women are looking for romance. Not that they don't want a good physical connection, they do, but they really want intimacy first. They want emotional, relational intimacy first. It's not that men aren't interested in relational or emotional intimacy. They are, but it's all a tease if there isn't a physical connection.
Wow. I think he really kind of laid that out there for us. The differences between men and women. Men are moved by first what they see in terms of their eye gate, and they're looking for the physical connection. Women are moved by the romantic side of the intimacy, and I would say the matters of the heart first. And it's not that women are not necessarily looking for the physical connection. It is important to them, but the intimate part is first. And it's not that the men are not looking for the intimacy connection in terms of the tenderness of heart and the emotional connection, but without the physical added to that, like he said, it can become a tease.
Right.
And so I think it's important for us to understand that men and women are wired differently.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that our differences, one is better than the other. What it does mean is that we're wired differently, and we're uniquely designed, as the scriptures would say, fearfully and wonderfully made. And so that being the case, tonight I had the thought about, based on those differences, how do we do life together? And not just the sexual connection, but in all the facets of life. And so I want to make sure that we are encompassing of all of that, of how do we do life together in terms of our connections. God bless you, Sister Sheila Wilkerson, for tuning in on tonight. And as we go through this tonight, you feel free to put your comments in, and we'll make sure that we're able to share those, and we'll get to some questions. I want to start tonight, or do you want to start tonight?
Oh, no, you start.
All right, so I'll start tonight with my very, very first one. How do we do life together based on the connections the differences in terms that we have with each other? And our first thing, we got to have understanding. It's important for us as men and women to really understand each other in order to be able to make sure that we connect well with each other, and understanding our differences without shade. That's my point about that. Understanding our differences without shade, because sometimes, because a man is wired and orients to life a particular way, sometimes women can feel like men are just ogres and pigs and all that kind of stuff. And then vice versa with women, because women orient to life a particular kind of way. All of a sudden now she's just soft and can't handle everything and is overall extra emotional. But it's important to appreciate the differences of how each other orient to understand each other in order to maintain the connection, so that you can have the moments where you can literally do life together. And that's what we're talking about tonight. How to be able to understand the differences and note them, so that you can deal with the issues of life in a relationship as they come, one at a time, because there are going to be some areas where men are going to need to lead, and there are going to be some areas where women need to lead, so that doing life together can happen.
Yes.
So that it can happen. Go ahead, dear.
Well, I'm listening and I'm hearing him, even the whole difference is that men want the physical, for me again. So women want the romantic, and men are looking at the physical.
Yeah, men are looking at the physical first, and then the women are looking at the emotional and the romantic connection first.
And it's not that either don't want the opposite thing.
Right.
It's just that what we're attracted to first may appeal, that appeal is different.
Right. The appeal is different. Yeah.
So sometimes when we're approaching relationships, we're looking for, sometimes we can lock people into that and say, well, we focus on the wrong thing. So as a woman, the woman would start focusing on her outer appearance,
Right.
where they've got to be attracted to me first.
Right.
Yes and no. Because beauty, it's beauty can be hidden. The inner beauty is what really has to be magnified, and sometimes it's hidden because of different masks that we wear.
Right.
So we have to be careful that we don't misappropriate what we're thinking that man wants, or thinking what that woman wants. And sometimes the man can come off overly romantic in the beginning, and then we find out he's not really romantic at all.
Right.
That's what he used to attract.
He's
so
just putting on a show right now.
Right. You have to be careful. You want the real thing to be the real thing. But if I had to start off, talking about different by design, I would look at the ABCs of building blocks.
All right.
Or the ABCs of construction.
Okay.
And the first thing I would look at is my A, because I'm going to do A, B, and C.
All right.
Is agreement. How can two walk together except they be agreed? What do we agree on as we're entering into this relationship? Is there an area of agreement, or is there an area of strong disagreement that we absolutely cannot get over? What am I not willing to compromise on, and what are we agreeing on as we enter into the relationship? So agreement would be my first one.
Yeah.
Because you've got to be able to walk together for the long haul.
Right.
You don't want a seasonal agreement where the sun is shining, and so you're happy together, and that's what you think that it's always going to be a sunshiny day. We got to watch people through seasons.
That's good.
Summer, winter, spring, fall. When things are going great and when things are not going so great.
Yeah.
But what do we agree on? Do we agree that we love God? Do we agree that we're givers and that we're going to tithe with our finances? Do we agree on how we raise our children, or how we treat our bonus children? Do we agree that it's important that when you accept someone into your life, you're accepting all of them that comes with it? And have you agreed that that's what it is? Just because you date that person and the two of you are on a date doesn't mean that it's always just going to be the two of you.
Right.
If there are children involved,
right.
And have you agreed that there has to be some concessions on what needs to happen in raising children?
I think that you're right on the money. That being able to come to a place of agreement, given the differences, and understand myself and one of mine in terms of what your end goal is, of where it is that you want to end up being. And so when you started to talk about the part, remember, we're talking about beginning again. And so much of our audience is going to be people who are in the second time or next time around relationships. Although some of you first timers, there's a lot that you can learn by tuning in and walking in with this kind of an informative session, because when you start to talk about some of the other factors that cause for the relationship to work well, you've got to be able to maintain what the end goal is in terms of what agreement looks like. And that doesn't necessarily always mean having a cookie cutter approach to something. What it does mean is, like I said earlier, understanding each other in terms of how one orients to the world, making sure that there's understanding for the purposes of agreement. And I think that a lot of times when couples have to add the other factors, like you talked about, children, concessions. One of the things that we did up early on while we were dating, we dated exclusively, you and I, so that we could be together on the same page. And then you made one of the requests, okay, you've taken me out, we've done this, we've gone away, now we need to include the children. And then we included a family vacation where we brought all the bonus children together and brought everyone together and did some things leading up to that. You know what I mean? So
a majority, not maybe left it loud.
Hey, because the basis of the relationship and of the family unit is the husband and wife being able to be together and walk together on the same page. I think that's good. I'm gonna move to my number 2 for the sake of time tonight. And my number 2 is uproot. We must remove the pressure. This is important, to conform to the other person. So removing the pressure to respond like the other person would respond, like you started to talk about. Women automatically they understand that men are moved by what their eyes can see, by the physical.
Right.
Well, not always giving the response to a man as if he has no insight of the internal.
Yes.
Because really, a man wants to be with a woman that he can trust. That's an internal thing.
Right.
And so once he's with a woman that he can trust, then he'll begin to open up and make those connections on an emotional level.
It's very
That's
important.
so important. So when I start to talk about uprooting, I'm talking about uprooting preconceived notions and ideas that would cause you to always want to orient toward the other person's way that they orient. No, we want you to be yourself, because we're talking relationship being maintained for the long haul. So each of us, men and women, got some things that have taken place in previous relationships, upbringing, family dynamics, that have got to be uprooted and pulled out so that the current relationship has a chance to survive, and not just survive, but to thrive.
Right. And sweetheart, even as you're saying that, and we talk about the physical, sometimes you become intimate too soon. See, women can sometimes associate intimacy with security. And that's not necessarily so.
No.
A man may not feel that intimacy is security. It was
it's a great release for him at that moment. I'm just talking.
I was trying to give him a little more credit.
No, I'm just talking for. Let me just talk for them. Hey,
not all, but for some,
Listen, this is a great release. This is a great moment to feel good. This is a great moment of connectivity that's happening and taking place. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I am secure with you. What it does, moment where we had a good time. Okay.
And he may be able to get it again.
Right.
But we have to be very careful that we don't assimilate security with sex.
Right.
Because they're not the same.
They're not the same. Okay. That is so important. Go ahead.
So my B, moving on to my ABCs, my B would be you build together. And building is a process. It's one day at a time. It's one experience at a time. Building doesn't happen all at foundation laid. And building takes time. So I'm almost saying the same thing again. It takes time, but you build. You found somebody that's willing to build with you, and you build with them. Though you are different, you're adding to the other person, and that's what you should be looking for. You should expect, or I would encourage us to desire someone that wants to build with you, that does not want to work against you, but wants to build with you. And like I said, it needs a firm foundation. Decide, what are we going to build this relationship on? We're going to build it on Christ. We're going to build it on trust. We're going to have a foundation laid so that we can build high. The deeper the foundation, the deeper the roots between the two of you, the taller you can build that skyscraper, the taller you can build that building. So you want to take time to work on personality differences, understanding why the person does what they do. Why does he get a little apprehensive about particular subjects? Talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk. Engage in conversation. Because I can tell you, it'll be very frustrating as time goes on and you end up in a commitment and the person doesn't talk to you about anything, and you don't know how they're thinking, how they feel about it, but you keep performing acts. And you're like, well, what do they really feel about? What are they really thinking? Because you're different and you're reading the difference one way, but inside, because that person has been silent, they could be thinking something totally different. But you read it wrong because there was no communication. There was nothing that you were building on. So as you go along, you want to be careful how you build. Count the cost of what you're building. How can you build a tower at first? You count the cost. What is all getting involved when you enter into that second time or next time relationship? Even for first time relationships, just because it's a first time relationship, it doesn't mean you haven't come out of a situation that wasn't quite marriage, but it was a long-term relationship.
Long-term dating.
And that long-term relationship created a soul tie that you still have struggles dealing with or getting rid of, or you're bringing it to the altar and sometimes picking it right back up. And sometimes we need to make a decision. Sometimes it's a choice. We have to make a decision. I don't want to live this way anymore. Lord, help me to change the way that I view my past. Help me change the way that I've linked on to people. Help me change the way that I see my future. I don't have to make a judgment vow, meaning that I'm going to say, I'm never going to do this, that, or other again. But when we decide that we want to build, we also want to bring out the plans before the Lord and check our own hearts, because we need some fertile ground to build on. We need good ground to build a foundation, and that's everybody's heart.
Man, this is so good tonight. Tonight we're talking about different by design, men and women. How do we do life together, although we're different by design? I talked about first making sure that we understand each other, and being able to respect the differences without throwing shade at each other. She talked about agreement. How can two walk together except they can agree? Agreeing on what the end goal is. Then I talked about there's some things you've got to be able to uproot preconceived ideas, preconceived notions, previous experiences that have taken place that have happened between you or to you before the relationship, and that are happened to you in relationships that have been long-term, that are not necessarily marriages. And she talked about you've got to be willing to build together in order for it to survive. Doing life together requires agreement, building, understanding, and a willingness to uproot some things from a previous experience that are not necessarily working well. I'll tell you, let me just do a quick check-in. God bless you. Sister Sheila's tuned in tonight. Sunita's tuned in tonight. Sunita. She's put in, it looks like we're doing pretty good because she put in facts. So maybe what we're talking about tonight is helping somebody. If you haven't shared this yet, share it. Grab as many people in as you can, because tonight I want to talk about how do you do life together when there are differences, clear differences between men and women. Sister Teresa Harris says that's true. Some men don't like to communicate. And sometimes we as women assume too much. And you know what people say about assumptions. It makes I can't say that. This is a PG rated show. Thank y'all for tuning in. Let me jump right on back in. Let's get ready to close it out tonight. My last one is really tied to your second one, dear. My last one is tied to your second one. You talked about building. And I would say in order for couples to be able to do life together and to do it together well, with understanding and with uprooting some things, it's got to really be able to maintain a sense of unity.
Yes.
And we must work to maintain the goal of unity in terms of oneness and togetherness. That works hand in hand with agreement, oneness and togetherness. So when someone sees your spouse or your significant other, they see you.
Yes. And
vice versa, the absolute exact same, which requires for there to be the communication and also respect for their person, because there have been some moments and sometimes where couples don't respect each other's space or their time or their commitments they have, and they feel uncomfortable, particularly men, uncomfortable with, I need to check with my wife first. I need to see what's on her calendar, see what's on her schedule, see what she's got going on, see what we've got going on before I make a commitment to that.
Right.
And that is what's so good and necessary, and vice versa. I need to check with my husband first to see what he's got going on, to see what we have going on, to maintain the sense of unity of the balance of our dynamic together, because we're not just here, especially in a second time or next time around relationship. This is not something where we're just in and out. We're here for a lifetime until Christ returns. And so if you want to be able to do life well together, the goal of maintaining unity, oneness, and togetherness is essential if you're going to be able to do it together.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Even today, we were talking about our calendars and our schedules. And I said, well, there's possibly an opportunity, for me to go and sing somewhere or whatever. He said, well, I don't want to stand in your way. And I was like, no, that's not how I view it at all. Because especially for us in ministry and for those who get opportunities to go different places, every opportunity is not an ordained opportunity. It's not an ordained thing for you to do.
Right.
And you want to keep the agreement in your relationship.
Right.
If my husband has something planned, I want to know.
Right.
And so let me check with my husband first and see if he's okay with it. Because there is safety in submission. We don't want to. We don't like to talk about.
I was going to say, tell him what you said to me in the dialogue.
Right. And that's exactly what I said. Is that every opportunity is not ordained.
Right.
But there is safety and security in submission. And submission is simply coming under the mission. My husband is the head of my household. He is also my pastor, and I recognize him as my pastor. He's licensed me as a minister. So there's two factors going on there. That's my house, my home house, and then there's the house of God where I serve. And so I put some respect on his position in our home and in the ministry to run that opportunity by him and not run ahead. Think, whoa, this is God. You're getting in my way. No, I don't think that.
Right.
I don't believe that at all. I believe that God has ordained our relationship and our marriage, and we do things in order.
And note, men, what she said, and women as well. Note what my response was first. Honey, that's fine with me. I don't want to stand in your way.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize her gift. I recognize her being called as a psalmist and as a minister previously, prior to coming into a covenantal relationship of marriage. So respecting her person and respecting who she is, she then in turn comes back around and respects my position as the spiritual authority in the house, and then the first spiritual authority in the church, and then spiritual authority in the home, to say, is this an environment that's good for me to be in?
Mm-hmm.
Some may interpret that as controlling in our day and in our time.
Mm-hmm.
But what keeps it from being controlling first begins, men, listen in carefully, with the leadership on my end. I don't want to restrict or restrain you. Now she feels free to now align with what scripture has had to say in terms of the family dynamic and the church dynamic, is that the family is the first church.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
goes
that's
back
major.
to unity, understanding, agreement, all of that.
Yep.
My last one is C. So I had an A and a B and a C. My last one is C.
Go ahead, C.
And my C is we complement each other.
Oh, that's
We're not
good.
competing. Actually, I want to say this. We're not competing, nor is he completing. Sometimes we make the mistake of thinking, once I find that one, they're going to complete me. No, we're complete in Christ. Christ is who gives us our wholeness and gives us our completion, but we are complements one of the other. We've said in another broadcast that the best gift that we can give our spouse or future spouse is a healed life, being whole. Single, that word single, and I love the way the late Dr. Miles Monroe put it, is being whole. It is Christ makes us whole. We are whole individuals and aren't walking around halfway limp, looking for somebody to put us back together. No, you want to be complete in Christ so that you can complement the relationship. Your relationship becomes powerful. It's colorful. It's complementary. And then you're not competing with your spouse. You're not competing one with the other because you don't have to compete. You're pushing the other one forward, pushing them into purpose because you're walking in purpose. You're walking together in agreement. You're building your life together. And so my last C is definitely
complement one another. Let's jump in on our group that's hanging with us tonight to see if there are any questions. Let's hear first in terms of what they've had to say so far. We've got Promise. Hey, everyone. Hey, Sanita jumping in there tonight. Come on, Sister Sheila saying very good teaching. Here's your girl Margaret talking about some yes. And then you have, I know that's right, Teresa, that's good. Here is, I think, a great comment by Sister Anita. Yes, that scheduling an agreement with the partner is important. Letting your spouse be who they are, but providing that sanity check. Letting them be who they are, but that sanity check. And then that we are complete in Christ. Yes. We are complete in Christ. That's so important because you hear that, that movie that comes from. You complete me. I think that's the Jerry Maguire movie. Right. You complete me. No, you've got to be complete within yourself as an individual inside of Christ. What you want to do is be a good complement, as she said, to your spouse for the purposes of unity. So agreement, which gives you the ability to build together so that you can agree there's some things I've got to uproot and we've got to uproot as a couple, particularly in second time and next time around relationships, so that you can understand each other to simply begin again.
Yes, there is purpose in our differences.
That's good.
We are designed differently.
Yes,
because we are unique.
Yes.
Okay, we're unique. And so we don't lose ourselves in the other person so much. Sometimes relationships, people lose themselves or lose their identity. No, you're created different for a reason and for a purpose. We don't do things the exact same way for a reason. Because where I may be, we were talking to someone last night, we cover each other's blind spots where he may be stronger in some areas and he can see some things differently. Yes. I can do the same for him. I see some things differently. I may hear some things differently, but we complement. We grow together. We build together. We do life and ministry together. Yes. Everything is together, but we're designed differently because God created us that way.
Absolutely.
He created us that way.
I'm all male. Yeah. It just is what it is.
Everyone. But yes, we're different. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
fearfully and
Wonderfully
wonderfully
made.
made, and
Yeah.
we have different roles and different things that we do. But it
That's
doesn't
so
mean
good.
we can't cross over and do different things for each other.
Absolutely.
But that comes through agreement and unity and understanding, what we want to do and how we want to do it. Your relationship may not look like somebody else's relationship,
Mhm.
and that's okay.
Yes.
That is perfectly fine.
You've got to, these are general principles that are general and generic in scope, but can be applied particularly so that you can do life together
Right.
while you function in your differences by design. I hope that this has been helpful tonight and that you've been able to grab some truth out of this so that this begin again next time, second time around is the absolute last time around so that it will work well for you. Listen, we're out of time. Lady will be back tomorrow morning for Take It to the Lord Tuesday. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Be sure to share this with someone. Take care. God bless.
We love you.
We
God
love
bless you. Have a wonderful night.